All right. Hello, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, one welcome one. This Q&A. Hopefully, my voice will hold up here. Um, so someone sent me a video earlier, or whatever, a few days ago. Wanted my take on it. So it was a video about somebody that lived in a whatever Orthodox community here, whatever thriving Orthodox community, and they got enchanted by going to the middle of nowhere, like really where there's absolutely no community, and where there were Arabs, I guess, squatting there. So somebody basically got these Arabs out of there squatting, and they put up a house, or they put up, I don't know, whatever it was, some sort of house. So the person was going this whole thing, how enchanting it is, and not just enchanting, but empowering to settle the land of Israel, right? Settling the land. Now, where this is, I mean, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But there's an idea. There's an idea. People will say we have a right to any part in the land, right? The land of Israel that belongs to us, right? All belongs to us. Very clear. Now, the issue is, even if that's true, now people squatting there, obviously, it's illegal. They, should be kicked out, whatever. Jews should be living there. Now, there are a number of questions here. One is that the claim would be if there's not a Jewish presence, even in let's say, highly populated areas nearby of Arabs. Yeah. If you don't go there and you don't live there, or at least some people live there, so what's going to happen? The Arabs are going to come and squat there, or not squat there, whatever. They're going to take over the land, right? Essentially, they're going to take over the land. So therefore, there needs to be a Jewish presence, in so many different places. Otherwise, what's going to happen? The Arabs will come and they'll be there illegally, right? Then whatever, not so easy to get them off. But in general, they'll surround certain areas, and then, Jews won't be able to go there. So there is what to be said. I'm not going to say not. There is what to be said, certainly for that. The question would be, is that, first of all, I mean, you have no infrastructure. I mean, in this place, they were talking about there's no electricity. There was no water, right? They had to bring, um, obviously, they had to bring it themselves, so to speak. So, it's an interesting thing. This person was saying, I don't know, it took 6 months for them to build something there, or get an infrastructure up and all that. So, but there's nothing there. There's no community there. Yeah, I don't know exactly where the nearest community is. How far out that they are, but there are a number of questions here. One is, are you allowed, for the sake of inhabiting the land, are you allowed to go somewhere, A, where there are no people? So then you got a problem with praying and all that. You don't have 10 men, right? Or maybe you have to import them or whatever. The second question is, I think, a more pertinent question, and that is, are you allowed to put your life in danger? Are you allowed to put your life in danger? Right? That's the question. So I remember a number of years ago, I asked my Rabbi this question, someone, let's say, goes to visit a place, but say a dangerous place. They go to we're talking about the land of Israel. Let's say they go to a place and they have to go through, you have to go to the Arab villages. To go there, there are no, let's say there are no bypass roads, right? And let's say a person, God forbid, would get injured or killed. Let's say they got killed, even worse. Let's say they got killed because they wanted to go to this place or, whatever. So I asked him point blank, is this considered what we call Mabedus Nafsho Badas? Is it suicide? Is a person literally committing suicide? So he said no. Why not? First of all, even if it's a danger, it doesn't mean necessarily anything's going to happen, right? There are people that go to Joseph's tomb. Joseph's tomb is outside Shechem, outside Nablus, as they would call it, whatever, Shechem. And it's a very hostile Arab city. Hostile is being generous. Tens of thousands of terrorists in this place, right? In any case, every time now Jews, if they want to go there, they have to have an army escort, right? In order to go pray there, which is kind of crazy, because there's a whole area, they need an army escort. Now, every single time, I mean, this goes without fail. Every single time a group of Jews go there to pray. Yeah, they go there to pray. There's always an incident. They have to try and firebomb, attack people. Obviously, that's why you need an army presence there. I mean, it's like without fail. I mean, it's very rare. It's very rare people go there that something doesn't happen. And they burnt that place down to the ground a number of times over the years. The Arabs have done. Now, some will say we absolutely have a right to go there, which is true. That 100% is true. Right? That 100% is true. But, you need a presence there. By having a presence there, it nullifies or cools down where the Arabs are. In other words, even though they they have many cities where they live in, and in any case, if Jews live there, they're gonna need protection, right? It's no question, right? And these type of places, so it's a catch-22. If you don't go there in these places, what's gonna happen? They have to take it over. Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, the second thing is, are you allowed to put yourself in danger? Now, anywhere a Jew lives in Israel, I would say there are more dangerous places to live. I don't think there's any question. And there are, less dangerous places to live and places that you don't have any problems at all, which is a lot of places. So that doesn't mean you don't have flare-ups here or other things going on. But in general, in most cities, in Israel, 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, you can go out, no problem. No problem. Nothing happens. Certainly in religious cities, right? That for sure, right? No petty crime. There's nothing, right? Right. So the claim that like the whole place is dangerous, that it's kind of a misnomer because even though it seems more things happen here, right? You get more attacks, right? Let's say, probably more than any other place. Could be, right? Could be. I'm not, not denying that, right? But in most cities in America and other places at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, people aren't going out. They're just not going out. It's too dangerous. Yeah, I'm not saying every place, but a lot of places. A lot of places, people don't feel safe. Right? Where I live, you go out late at night, not a problem. You go to Bnei Brak, you go to other places, you go to Jerusalem, you don't have, there's no problems. It just in general, because it's like the Wild West, right? Anyone who's ever come here to visit, they'll see that's obviously not the case. right? Yeah, it's certainly not the case. And like people fighting in the streets and being attacked all the time. Not true. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying there aren't terrorist attacks. There are. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. You know what? Sometimes it's actually pretty quiet, right? For the most part. Yeah, but okay, not saying it can't happen. Not every, obviously not every city. Not every city, is a hotbed of terrorist activity, and they're just looking to kill Jews everywhere. I mean, that might be the case. What Arabs want to do, doing it's a different issue. But again, in Jewish cities, I mean, I live in a city of 100,000 people, more than 100,000 people. Yeah, so it's an Arab village nearby. So you need army protection, you need police protection. Okay, but crime and other things only come from them. Orthodox Jews don't commit crimes in general. Yeah. I'm not saying you can't have, skirmishes and people arguing and it might lead to fisticuffs and different things. In general, very rare. Very, very rare. I'm not saying it can't happen. But you have a city of 100,000 people and you got stores open till midnight, 1 in the morning, different things. Nothing. Quiet, relatively speaking. Yeah. Now, the only reason you need, an army presence and police presence, because, you never. Where do the problems come from? Anytime cars broken into, something stolen, it's usually the Arabs, right? 99% of the time. That's not being racist. That's facts on the ground. Facts on the ground. I'm not saying you don't have Jewish thieves. You can have Jewish thieves, right? But in religious areas, no problems. You have no problems. Now, secular areas, you can have crime, 100%. If they're more like non-Jews than Jews, certainly you can have crime. You can have crime, other things going on. That's true. But cities themselves in general, even with that, are safer than most places in the world. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Right? I've lived there 30 years, so I don't think there's any question. Now, are there dangerous places to go? Yeah. Would you go there at night? Probably not. Probably a lot of people wouldn't, right? Because it's dangerous. Okay. You have dangerous places. But I'm saying in a lot of places where, they're Orthodox Jews, you don't have any problems. You have any problem. But 99% of the problems, are with Arabs. That's, listen, you have crime. I'm not saying you don't have crime. You do have crime here. You have people shooting at each other. Different things can happen. In these communities that obviously are far from Torah. You can have that. Yeah. But no, in very significant populations, of Orthodox Jews, you don't have it. Just the opposite. It's funny, Friday night, whatever, one of my daughter's in-laws, whatever, their daughter's grandmother, her husband's grandmother was here, so I went with my wife to go visit. So this was about a 20-minute walk, 15-minute walk, from my house. So, Shabbos comes in late, relatively late, almost 7 o'clock. So we didn't finish the meal till, let's say, quarter to 10, maybe about 10 o'clock, let's say. So 10 o'clock we went out. And so we were there for a while. We were there till, we didn't get there till like 10:20, 10:30. By the time we left, it was about 11:30, 20 to 12. Yeah, I got home about midnight, and you would think, there are parents out there with their kids. I don't know what the kids are doing up so late, little kids or whatever. Okay. Plenty of people out. Plenty of people out. You would thought it was broad daylight. Yeah. Anybody worried someone's going to attack them, something's going to happen? No one's worried about that. In general. Again, I'm not saying it can't happen. But in these places it doesn't happen. And crime is relatively small, in the bigger scheme of things. Right. But again, in general, there are two issues. Living in the land, everyone's got a right to live in the land. Yeah. One claim is that I can live anywhere, which again, I don't have an issue with. And there is what to be said for the fact that if you don't live in certain places, the Arabs come take it over. There is truth to that. 100% there is truth to that. But the second part of the question, well, one question is, how do you go there, and there are no other people there? There's no established community there. You don't even have a minion to go to. Yeah, that's the problem, right? That's one problem. Second problem is danger, right? You're in a place, you need protection. The army or somebody, or at least you have to have protection. Yeah, putting yourself in danger. But this gets into the question also, just throw this out there, that there are people, I mean, I've read stories, number of stories. You have people, like to travel. Okay. They go travel and, I'm not saying dangerous places. That's like a whole nother issue, but whatever, they go travel. So they go travel like in places where there are no Jews. Right? Like there are no Jews at all in these places. Or you have to travel very far to get to them, whatever. Okay, so if you're traveling for a significant amount of time, some people will take, some people said, it took 2 months, took 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Right? They go to a place, like absolutely in the middle of nowhere, no Jews, no nothing. Whatever, pack a lot of food, it's got out the place what they need, okay. But how is it that a person does that? I don't care what the experience is. How does a person do that? You have no place to pray. For a guy, doesn't apply to a woman. For a guy, it's hey, pray on your own. You don't have a place to go. Very good. But who said you have to put yourself in such a situation? So someone had an idea many years ago that my family drive cross country, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. Go to different places. But then they thought about it and they said, wait a minute. What are we going to do? You need a place to pray. Very good. Yeah. What are you going to do? You're in the middle of the night or somewhere else. There's nowhere to pray. That's a problem. That is a problem. If someone is in a place, let's say for work, you have no choice. And you're in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So you don't have a choice. So that you got to pray on your own. That you got to bring your own food. Okay. Can't say, well, I have nowhere to pray. I can't go. Okay. For business, that's what, people have to do it. People travel to all kinds of far-flung places. Okay. Yeah. But going there, for holiday, let's say, and to go on vacation, I'm not saying you can't take a vacation. Yeah, but at the same time, you're sacrificing other things. So, the same reaction comes up. I'll read the story, my wife will read the story, and my wife will be like, how can they do that? How can they go to a place they have nowhere to pray? Because they're going to go for 2 weeks, a month, whatever it is. Okay, they want to go. Great. They need to go on vacation. Okay. They're on the road, this, that. How do they do that? Prayer is a huge thing. It's a huge thing. If you pray on your own, God scrutinizes those prayers more than if you pray with a congregation. And even if a lot of people in the congregation are sinners, okay, but you're a congregation. So you're part of that congregation. God cut you a lot of slack. Again, you got to try the best of your ability to have intention, whatever, okay. But in general, it's certainly much better. It's certainly much better to pray with 10 men if you're a guy. No question. Yeah. Now, if you can't and you're sick, there's an onus that's beyond your control, it's a different issue. It's a different issue. But if a person just whatever is lazy, so they pray, okay. They don't pray with 10 men. So that's not a congregation. If that's not a congregation, again, this doesn't apply to women. Because it's a mitzvah bound by time. So this wouldn't apply. Women certainly can pray in their own. That's not a problem. A guy's got a problem. So God looking at it is going to say, oh, you're not taking me so seriously. You're praying on your own because you're lazy, because you're whatever it is. Right? Let's say you don't have a good excuse. You don't have any excuse. So now God's going to take that prayer and look at it and scrutinize it. If you're part of a quorum of a minyan, where the Torah says, how do we learn it out? We learn out from the word Ada. The word Ada means a group, right? Like a group of people, right? So learn Ada in another verse that means 10 people. Yeah, very good. So the Torah says, I want you to sanctify me amongst the Jewish people. Sanctifying me amongst the Jewish people means, in this case, it means you have 10 men. And you pray with 10 men. Very good. So then God's presence is there. Right? God's presence is there. You're part of a congregation. Even if a lot of the people, now this is a novelty. Even if a lot of people, you're praying with aren't such great people. Spiritual terms. They're not such great people. Okay. God still looks at everybody as a group, not necessarily as each person as an individual. Yeah. If a person just there doing nothing or whatever, it's a different issue. Right? But if you're trying or whatever, even at your low level and your mind wanders and other things happen, okay, there's a huge, huge difference between someone who prays with 10 men and someone who doesn't. The way God looks at it. Even if people there are not the greatest people spiritually, that's a huge thing. That's a novelty. And if you look at the prayers in general are what? They're in plural. Yeah, they're not the singular, right? You're praying for everybody. There are places to put in your own prayers, whatever. There are places that are somewhat singular. Most of them are national needs. Yeah, and also individual needs. But it's all plural. So, the Rambam says there are 24 things stop a person from true repentance, right? The laws of repentance, it brings us down. What's one of them? You cannot separate from the community. That means you can't go live on your own island. But it goes more than that. It means if you go somewhere, you got to think. Okay, I need to pray. Where am I going to go pray? That's got to be in the top of your mind. If I can tell you, 12 years ago, anniversary of my father's death is coming up in a few weeks, about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks. So when a parent dies, or anybody dies, you have an obligation to mourn for. Father, mother, sister, brother, God forbid a child or a spouse. Person mourning, if it's a guy, he has to pray from the Amud. He has to lead services. Now, some people aren't necessarily so capable. The big man, so other people do it, but they say the mourner's prayer, etc. Now, for a parent, it's 11 months. Pretty much 11 months, 3 times a day, except on Shabbos and any festival, that you have to lead services. Now, that is a tremendous, it's a tremendous yoke, right? Especially if, let's say, you're the only one in the family, that's religious. So you got all the responsibility. So I remember for 11 months, every single day, I'm not the only mourner here. But, plenty of other people, have to say the mourner's prayer, have to lead services. You got to find a place. You got to find fixed places every single day, to pray with the minyan. And you have to lead services if you're able to. So if that's the case, that is where your thoughts are. Every single day, again, for a guy, that's where your thoughts are. You have to worry, okay, where am I going to be in the morning? Right? Where am I going to be in the afternoon? Yeah, where am I going to be at night? Yeah, and I said this very often, during that time, and that is that's what we should be thinking. That's what a guy should be thinking. Okay, I got my schedule in the morning, right? Okay, in the winter, sundown is early. Sundown can be as early as, here in Israel. Sundown can be as early as, 20 to 5, let's say. Sundown in other places can be earlier. Yeah, it could be 4 o'clock. It could be 3:30 sometimes. Yeah, some places. Okay. Now you're going to say, well, I work. How do I get out to do that? Okay, person's got to work it out somehow. Sometimes maybe you can't. Okay. Yeah, but your day is planned around this whole thing. It's planned around where am I going to be in the morning? Where am I going to be in the afternoon? Where am I going to be at night? Yeah. This is something you can't get around. Right. You cannot get around. You have to be somewhere. Right. Even if you don't lead the services, you have to be somewhere to be able to say the prayer. Right. You have to say the mourner's prayer. That's a big elevation for the soul, right? For the soul of the deceased. But I kept saying, first of all, not only is it a yoke, everybody feels it because it's just day in and day out for 11 months. I mean, it's a long time, right? It's a long time. So you always, when you're mourning like that, you feel it, right? Can't listen to music. If someone else is playing music, you don't have to tell them to turn it off. But you yourself can't listen to music. Now, if you like to listen to music, it's kind of a problem. I remember, I mean, a lot of different customs, but in general, you're not allowed to listen to music. So, not allowed to go to weddings. I remember one wedding I had to go to. I had to go to a close friend of mine. So I went to the chuppah, I went to the service. Once they started playing music, that's it, I left. I couldn't stay. Right, it's impossible to stay. So I remember I went to a bar mitzvah, close friend of mine, whatever, grandson's bar mitzvah, whatever. So I went, I hung out there for a little bit. It's, less dancing and music than certainly by a wedding, right? So some people go to these things. Okay, so I went, and then all of a sudden I hear music. So I said, "Oh, gotta go." I said, "It's been nice knowing you. Gotta go. It's music." They're like, "Come on, it's not really music." Well, I would call it dentist music, right? Right about, you're about to get drilled, like, soft music, right? Let's say, you know, soft music. So this person's like, come on, it's not real music. It's not music like, it's gonna get you up to sing and dance. I said, doesn't matter, it's music. I said, if it's music, it's irrelevant, it should be forbidden. So I told them, I said, you know what? I said, I'm gonna humor you. I said tomorrow. I said, I'm going to go learn. I said, when I go learn, I said, I'll see my Rabbi. They'll ask him. I'll ask him. I said, but I'm going to tell you this, what he's going to tell me. He's going to say, did it sound like music? Were there instruments? Was it music? It's music. So you can't listen. I said, that's what he's going to tell me. But you know what? I'm going to humor you. The guy kept talking to me. He's like, nah, it's not really music. It can't really be forbidden. It's soft music and whatever. I said, okay, I'm going to humor you. I'm going to humor you. So next day I went to learn. So I saw my Rabbi there. So I asked him. And he said exactly what I said. He said, "Was it music? Did you hear instruments? You know what instruments are?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." He goes, "You heard music? Then it's forbidden." I said, "Thank you very much." So I said, "What'd you think?" I said, "Of course, this is what I thought." I said, "I left." So once I heard music, I left. I had to be there for something. I stayed for a little bit and I left. That was it. I couldn't stay. I mean, by wedding, it's worse. Wedding's a lot worse. Once the ceremony's over, then band picks up. I mean, it's like, a lot of very intense music and dancing. Okay, that's it. Right? Can't stay for that. That's enjoyment. So can't get enjoyment from that. You're in mourning. Right? These things you never forget. You never forget. Because it's always surrounding you by anybody else. A mother, father, sister, brother, God forbid, a child or a spouse, only 30 days. Right? For a parent, it's 11 months. Really say the mourner's prayer for 11 months. No question about the 12th month. Right? 12 months, some people say the mourner's prayer a few times, some people don't say it at all, because really then you're saying the person's really evil, and you're saying the mourner's prayer for 12 months, which should be for 11 months, whatever it may be. Like a lot of different customs. A lot of different customs. But the point, anyway, I don't want to get lost my parable here. The point is that it's something you can never forget. It is something never forget. Yeah, because you always have an obligation. You always have an obligation. Since you have an obligation, right, 3 times a day, you don't have a choice. Right? You absolutely have no choice. So it's something where, that, you always feel it. And for a guy, you should always feel it. Because you always have an obligation to pray. You gotta pray in the morning, gotta pray in the afternoon, you gotta figure out the times. In summer it's easier. Sundown's later. Right? So you get your whole day. Right? In the winter it's harder. Because sundown is earlier. So, you got to plan. You got to plan accordingly. Now, sometimes things don't always go your way and whatever. Things can happen. It's Murphy's Law. Poor guy Murphy gets blamed for everything. Whatever. But in general, I said it many, many times. Yeah, 'cause I went through it, and everyone else goes through the same thing. But I said it. First of all, it's something you can't forget every day. Not only can't you forget it, right? But that's the way it should be. That should be, a guy's focus. That's the most important thing during the day. Where am I going to pray? Right? What time am I going to pray? How's my schedule work out? This, that. You have a Jewish community, it's a lot easier. Got a lot more synagogues. So if you can't make this one, you make another, you make another minyan, whatever. Different place. So you have a place where to go. Problem is, what if you live in a place you only have one? You only have one place. Or even better. What if you live in a place, the only place there is Chabad? Okay. Nothing against Chabad. Let's say they don't have a minyan, they have a minyan in the morning. They don't have a minyan at night. Or the afternoon, they don't have enough people. Yeah. So what do? That's what you do. You have to pray on your own. You have a choice. Right? After you don't have a choice. But, it's always better to be in a place where there are more, definitely more, more places. But again, it's, um, um, that's what I want to say about that. Someone says, sounds like I have a head cold. I don't know if it's a head cold, maybe it was really in my throat, but, whatever, it's getting better. Getting better. Someone says spicy chill. Okay, maybe I'll try it. If I spit it up because it's too spicy, I'll blame you. All right. Is everyone in my city Orthodox Jews where I live? Yeah. I mean, more or less. Secular Jews do not want to live with Orthodox Jews. Right? So it's funny. Somebody came a few years ago, or whatever, a number of years ago, came to visit. So they came to where I live. And they're like, how many secular Jews live here? I'm like, nobody. And they were shocked. Like, really? So there wasn't most people either you're Ashkenazic, you're Sephardic, right, or you're Hasidic. It's a big Hasidic community here, right? In there are two main areas here, so there are big Hasidic community here, as well. But I mean, you do have some people that I would say less religious, let's say, right, but they would consider themselves as part of the community, right? As being religious. So I would say it's pretty much 100%, more or less. In all these cities are like that. B'nai Brak's like that. A lot of places in Jerusalem, certainly like that. You have mixed areas. There are places where you do have, you definitely have mixed areas of religious Jews and secular Jews. I'm saying in the heart of like very strong Jewish communities. They're all Orthodox because secular Jews don't want to live there. Secular Jews will never live there. Right? Like someone said, how many secular Jews are you friendly with? I'm like, not too many. They're like, see? Like, you're so close-minded. My answer should have been, and that's what everyone should answer. Don't make my mistake. Right? And you tell them how many Orthodox Jews you're friendly with. Just answer a question with their question. See, you're so close-minded. I never claimed to be open-minded. Right? But they claim to be open-minded. So you're hanging out with Orthodox Jews? No, I don't think so. Right? I'll bet all the money I don't have. No, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. You might know somebody maybe that's Orthodox. Maybe. Everybody knows someone who's Orthodox, more or less. In the secular community, a lot of people do. Okay. They're going to hang out with them? They're going to go live in their community? I don't think so. I don't think so. They think like, we're going to chain them down. We're going to close off the road, shave the women's heads. I mean, like, think all kinds of crazy things. Right? But the question is, where I live, yeah, they're just about almost 100% Orthodox Jews, right? Spoiled because, they don't really come in contact with secular Jews that much. Even in strong places, let's say, in the States, you have non-Jews there. Forget about secular Jews, you can have non-Jews there also, right? But there are very few places that, you have like New Square, Monroe, you have, enclaves that are just totally ultra Orthodox. Okay. But most places, it's gonna be, the Orthodox community will be in a certain area. And then you have, let's say, secular Jews in the outer, and non-Jews or whatever. Right? But you're not totally insulated. I mean, technically speaking, except for a hospital here, we have just about everything we need. You don't need to go anywhere. Yeah, we got health, health insurance, health places here. You don't have a hospital here, okay. But I mean, whatever. Food stores, you got everything here. Right? Not lacking anything. Not like you have to go anywhere. right? Also, but in general, it's a huge thing. Because coming in contact with sexual people, yeah, I mean, whatever. Sometimes you have no choice, right? But it has an effect, right? So it has a has an effect. Someone asks why 11 months. First of all, it should be a year. It should be a year of saying, of praying 3 times a day and saying the morning's prayer. Why don't we do it for a year? Why is it really only for 11 months and 12 months? In the last month, some people only lead services a few times. Some people only say the morning's prayer a few times. They don't say it all the time. They alternate days, or I mean, a lot of different customs. But the reason you don't do it full blast like you would do the last 11 months, because then the assumption is if you're saying Kaddish for that person, if you're saying the morning's prayer for that person for 12 months, that means they're evil. That means they're evil. Right? You never want to give them the connotation, even if they are, it doesn't matter. But you don't want to give off the connotation that that they're evil. So therefore everything applies, within 11 months. I mean, the 12th month also can't listen to music, can't go to weddings, right? We're just talking about prayer. Talking about prayer and saying the morning's prayer. Right? So the 12th month is considered like if you would lead the services or whatever for that 12th month, every day it's as if you're saying this person's evil. Right? For 11 months, that's the norm for everybody. Everybody do at least for 11 months. No question. If the person needs extra help and they're tremendously evil, okay, so then you go in the 12th month. But again, most people don't do it. Most people don't do it. It's a bad simon. It's a bad sign. Right? It's a bad sign. It's like you're saying that they're evil. They tell me what if they are? Very good. And what if, let's say you're saying Kaddish for somebody, you're saying the morning's prayer, let's say, a Jew and the parent wasn't religious, or a sibling, let's say, wasn't religious, right? So the question becomes, is that prayer even helping them? One of my rabbis, very much steeped in Kabbalah, a blessed memory, once told me, according to Kabbalah, for whatever it's worth, it could take 40 years. 40 years for a person to actually get to Gehenna, to actually get to the place that they need to be purified. Because that's what Gehenna is. It's a purification process, or hell, as some people translate. It's a purification process. Okay. So I asked the obvious question. The obvious question is, what are they doing for 40 years if they're not there? Getting their soul purged. He's like, you don't want to know. He said it's already a level to get there, even by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Just to get there is a huge thing, because then hopefully something's going to be left of your soul. You'll have a portion of the world to come. It's a mind-boggling thing. But everyone said, he didn't say it in the name of who, but he also told me one Hasidic Rabbi said, Halavai, I'll actually even get to Gehenna. I mean, you're talking about someone like very, very righteous, someone very, very pious, right? And he said on himself, again, tremendous humility here, but saying on himself that Halavai, I'll even get there because of the sins we do, or the sins I've done, let's say. He didn't say who said it in the name of. Yeah. So you tell me, okay, that's, extra humility and whatever, but still, it's a merit to get there, and we can't even imagine, the judgment, that goes on. So I told my Rabbi tongue in cheek once, I said, I hope whatever I do, one of the things people do is they learn Mishnayos. They learn Mishnayos in their memory, right? It gives them merit. Gives them merit in the next world. So I said, at least I hope what I do doesn't hurt. Because, whatever, I'm doing everything I can do. I'm the only one doing anything. And I said, Alabai, it doesn't hurt. He said, yeah. He said, you're right. Hopefully it doesn't. So whatever you do, you do what you can do. But it's a level to even get to Gehenna. That's the whole thing. Even to get there, the whole thing is purification. So getting purification is huge. You got to get there first. And could be any number of things going on before that. But it's a scary proposition, because now you have to give din v'cheshbon. You have to give judgment. You're going to get judgment, and you have to answer for what you've done. Especially, a person lived I don't know, lived 80 years, 90 years, 70 years. They have to answer for every last thing that they've done. Could be, could be God will have mercy on some things. Other things He's gonna say, "This is what you did." It's gonna play back the video, right? Right. Anyone's ever had an out-of-body experience, they say the same thing. They see their life flash before their eyes, every last thing they did. Yeah, they can't say they didn't do it. They can't say I didn't have my hand in the cookie jar. You had your hand in the cookie jar. Why you had your hand in the cookie jar? Okay, let's see. Let's see if you got a good excuse. If you got a good excuse, maybe. If not, you're gonna pay. That's part of what hell is. It's the embarrassment. It's the embarrassment of now what you have to go through. It's like you got caught red-handed doing something. Someone asked what kind of jobs average Orthodox Jewish men do. Um, that's a good question. There are many that learn, but other people are. I mean, there are people in high tech. There are people that um, work in stores. There are people that do they have they own stores. Let's say retail. Food for people involved in the food business. Food business is a very hard business to be in, but nonetheless, you got people in that, people in electronics. You got, I mean, it's not so common. I wouldn't say it's so common to see somebody in high tech, but there are people in high tech that train in high tech. That's the biggest field here. Most lucrative field would be in high tech. But I wouldn't say a lot of people, a lot of Orthodox Jews are in high tech. Um, I know some people that are architects. Some are, let's say, in social media, let's say, doing social media. I mean, do all kinds of things. All kinds of the only issue, except probably for high tech. I mean, there are people also doctors, nurses. Also the problem is they don't make as much money, certainly as if you'd be in the States. But in general, it's also catch 22 because once you're in high tech, most fields don't, they don't pay a lot. And not only that, but a lot of money gets eaten by taxes also. Right, it's a high tax bracket here also. So like 30 of your money is going to taxes. So it could be other places, the same thing. Right. But the difference is still you're making more money. You're making more, you're making less money. So you got money goes to health insurance, like Social Security. Some money goes to Social Security, some money will go to um also go to taxes, right? Or, we'll go to taxes. So if a person, let's say, will make it easy, a person works for someone else, so good. So you don't have any tax problems. They deal with all your taxes. So if you're independent, let's say, then then you got to get then you got to get an accountant and whatever, So money gets eaten up either way. But obviously, if you're making more money, so good. But you're paying a lot in taxes. So, and then the tax authority knows everyone's trying to hide money because they know it's like it's very hard to it's very hard to live here if you're making less money. So, how much a person's declaring, if you have your own business, let's say, or something like that. So, tax authorities raid people, often because they know, like, why aren't you declaring this, or you're probably making more money, or you're probably hiding money, or whatever. But they understand because people are, you get squeezed all over the place, right? You get squeezed all over the place. You got people, yeah, plumbers, got electricians, yeah. We got people that, yeah, retail store, food stores, yeah. Teachers, I forgot about teachers. You got teachers also. Yeah, that's a field a lot of Orthodox women work in are teachers. You got men teach also. I'm not saying that. They definitely teach a lot. Also, so whatever, a lot of different fields. Definitely a lot of different fields. All right. Somebody asks, I want to get to these questions also. Somebody asks, all right, answered that. Can you pray anywhere? I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, as long as it's clean, as long as there's no refuse, within, say 10 feet of you. Jews pray in the airplane standing up mid-plane. Yeah, some people would say you should just pray in your seat because you disturb people. You know, it's a flight to Israel or like a long flight, something like that. It disturbs people. So there are rabbinic authorities that would say that don't go to the back of the plane, or whatever, or the middle of the plane. I mean, you can't go really in the middle of the plane. But whatever, you go to an area in the back of the plants where a lot of people pray. Okay. But some people would say just better pray in your seat because you're just going to disturb people and it's not worth it. But yeah. So what do you do if you can't stand? You got to say Shemona Esrei silent meditation, whatever you want to call it. What do you do if you can't stand? So you sit. What happens if a person physically they can't stand? They get physical ailments, so you have to sit. You have to sit. You have no choice. Right. So on a plane, same thing. If you can't stand, you sit. And if you're like packed in like a sardine, you don't have that much room. I remember coming back when I was in the States a couple of years ago. So coming back, the sun came up. So okay, so I want to put on towels and film. It's like a tiny area. It's a very small area. So whatever, you do the best you can do, right? If you have 10 men, again, there are rabbinic authorities would say just forget it. Forget about praying there. Just pray in your seat. I remember before I got on the plane. Yeah, it was night. So so plenty of people going back to Israel. So, we gathered them in the airport. Yeah. As long as no statues or anything around. I wouldn't say it was the greatest thing, but you know, and we prayed in the airport, right? You pray by the terminal. I went during one of the intermediate days of Passover, went to a park with whatever, two of my kids and grandkids, and actually four of my kids and grandkids. And the earliest time to pray was like 1:15, right? So, again, sundown is later. Sundown is like, at that point, it was probably like, I don't know, 6:30, 5:30, 6:30, whatever it was. So I like to pray early just to, get out of the way so I have the rest of my day. So I went around asking people, I have my 13-year-old, almost 14-year-old son there. So he said, we're gonna pray. So I said, go around and ask people, and they looked at me. He's like, you do a better job. So I went around asking people, you know, if they wanted to pray. So someone says, yeah, if you get a minute together, I'll pray. If you get a minute together, so I want to make sure I had like 15 people, 10, 15 people. Yeah. So by like 1:20, I said, okay, we'll gather over here. I said, okay, just call me. Yeah. So we had a minute there, in the park. Really, you can pray anywhere. Definitely you can pray anywhere. Some people said, I don't want to pray here, I want to pray in the synagogue, no one would pray in the synagogue. Okay. You know, I was going to be around and whatever, and want to mess up the rest of my day. So I said, if we can take care of it this way, even better, even better. But so at the end of the day, it's what we did. Now, some people said no, they'll pray later. They'll, pray in a normal place, but you can pray there. Definitely can pray there again, as long as there's no bad smells there. It's not a problem, right? That you don't have a problem. Um, we had during COVID, what people did here is, where I used to live, there was whatever, had a porch. So everyone prayed on their porch, and there was someone in the middle, like in the streets, in the parking lot, right, who would lead the service. So now that's a whole question I don't really want to get into, but anyway, that's a whole question. You're not standing in the same place. Everyone can see each other, but you're not standing in one place. So the question is, if everybody sees each other, and you can hear and you can see, does everyone join the 10 for the million or not? So whatever, it's a whole question. It's a whole question. We hold you allowed to do it. Technically speaking, we hold you allowed to do it. It's a question though. It's a question every Saturday night after Shabbos. So I usually go pray. I usually go pray where I used to live. In that back parking lot, they have a minion there. It's convenient for people to just walk out their door instead of going to a synagogue. So usually Saturday night, I usually go there, just to strengthen or whatever. But you can pray anywhere. I mean, obviously, it's better to pray in the synagogue, right? I don't think that Again, it doesn't apply to women, but in general, you can pray. It's better to pray in the synagogue, for sure. But technically speaking, you can pray anywhere. You can pray anywhere as long as there are no, and again, there are no bad smells and other issues. Does many count for women? So in the Orthodox community, we don't count women. There are technical issues. There are technical issues why, but women, I mean, the Reform movement does, conservative movement does. You know, they, um, they definitely count women. You know, the Orthodox don't. Now there are some, and again, this is probably going to be just the modern Orthodox community. There are some women prayer groups. Now, there's certain things they can't say because there are no men there. But in general, there are many things they can say together as a group. Yeah. Is there anything wrong with it? No. I mean, it depends what you say, obviously, but in general, in general, in general, it's not a problem. In general, that's not a problem. Now, again, it's really only done in probably modern Orthodox community, and it's certainly not done on a regular basis. Right? It's not, people have other obligations. They have other obligations. Yeah, you can tell me, well, you know, they want to do it 3 times a day. They could. Nothing's stopping them. Or if they want to go to synagogue and pray with the men, they could do that also. Nothing is stopping them. Yeah. Do they have to? No, certainly not. But there's a good reason why they're not, women aren't counted. For this whole reason, they got other responsibilities. They got many other responsibilities. Now, what happens if a person says, well, I don't have any kids at home anymore? I could do this and whatever. It doesn't matter. Right? That doesn't matter. Fact is, women have different obligations. If God wanted them to be equal, quote unquote, to men, then they would have to pray 3 times with a minute just like men. So what are you going to do? Got a job. You got to get my kids out. I got other things. So what? You work it out. Find a babysitter. I don't know. You work it out. It has nothing to do with equality here. They're different obligations, right? If that would be the case, it would be impossible. Seemingly, it would be impossible for a woman to do it. And prayer is a huge thing. Prayer is a huge thing. So how could you put it on somebody and obligate them? Doesn't mean they don't have an obligation to pray. They have an obligation to pray, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, you can't put them in a situation where they're never going to be able to do it. Yeah, right. And many times, right, the rabbis will come along and say, we're not going to do this because the community won't be able to do it. And that's a huge thing. That is a huge thing. In other words, you're setting up these people to total failure. Like, it's not even a question, especially when they're younger. One of the Torah giants of the Torah giant of the last generation, Rabbi Yosef of blessed memory, he held that women with little kids had no obligation to pray. None. Not just once a day. Not just once a day. And they should find at least one, they should find time once a day. He said, absolutely not. Because they're busy dealing with their kids. Yeah, full-time job. Even if they're working outside the house. Yeah. It's a good thing to have their own connection to God and be able to pray and this and that. Very good. Right? But he held 100%. 100%. They're exempt. I mean, not everyone held this. I think the vast majority hold they should try and at least pray once, if possible. Once. But if you have a bunch of little kids, it's very hard. Extremely hard. But you got to find the time. Yeah, I see a lot of people praying on the bus. They just don't have time otherwise. Right? Going to work, wherever they're going. They pray on the bus. I'm not gonna say it's the greatest thing to do, but like if it's either that or nothing, that's it's certainly better than nothing. For sure they have other obligations. Right? A woman right after birth. Yeah, let's say. After an operation, doesn't matter. Now you're gonna tell her she gotta go pray. 3 times a day. So you say, well, she'll be exempt because she's not feeling well and whatever. Okay. Yeah, what do you do if you're sick? Same thing. Right? Same thing. But again, in that situation, she'd totally be exempt according to Rabbi Eliezer. They're just too busy. This kid wants this, the kid did that. Then all of a sudden, they try and pray, and one kid made, and you can't pray now. You got to change them in the middle. All kinds of issues. But again, someone will say, what happens if I don't have those issues? Okay, then you should pray. Then you should pray at least twice a day. No question. You want to go to synagogue? Whatever. Fine. That's not a problem. You can do it. 100%. There are women who go, afternoon, evening service. They can't get there in the morning. Okay, and nothing wrong with it. Yeah, but in general, they have different obligations. So you can't make the law for one. For one, say, oh, for you have to do this. For someone else, you have to do something else. You can't do that, right? Then you're gonna have like different Torahs. Everyone's gonna be doing their own thing. So in general, they should pray at least once a day, right? 100%. Other rabbinic authorities say twice a day. Very good. Yeah, but if you can't, and you're just too busy, and the kid's driving you up a wall, and you can't, whatever, you can't, right? It's like, so when you don't have those issues, so then you should, right? You should, if a person can do it, they have their own connection. Okay, it's very hard, very, very hard. Women feel that after, you know, being like totally intellectually stimulated, in all their years of, schooling, and then they go to seminary, let's say in Israel for a year or something like that, to get all inspired. Then what happens? And they get back to the real world, right? Come back to America, they get a degree, whatever it is, get married shortly thereafter, they start having kids, not the same. They don't have the same, intellectual stimulation they had before. They get some things maybe from their husband, from their spouse or whatever. Okay, but they also have to listen to class. They also, if they can go to class, they also have to be inspired. It's a major letdown. So it's a major letdown. Because you got to understand, they come to Israel, they get all fired up, they get all inspired, and they got no responsibilities. They got no responsibilities. Yeah, they do acts of kindness once a week now, but needy families, very good. Say they have no responsibilities at all. So like they're going to classes, getting inspired. So some of them getting college credit, very good. Yeah, but then when they're done, and they go back and the quote unquote, now okay, now I'm gonna get a job. Now I'm gonna be studying this and that. It's not the same. It's a major letdown. So there are places they have classes for women when they get back from seminary. It's not going to be all day long or whatever, try and fit their schedules or whatever, but like it's a major, major letdown. So not only that, but once they start having children, that's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different ballgame. They're tired. Yeah, kids up in the middle of the night a number of times. I'm not even saying that the husband doesn't help out. Let's say he takes a feeding in the middle of the night. Okay. So you don't have all that sleep. So you're feeling like you're jet lagged and whatever. And then let's say, I gotta go back to work 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, something like that. And it's draining. The whole thing is draining, right? Makes perfect sense. Right. So like to get that inspiration afterwards, it's hard. Yeah, so you gotta find a balance. Very good. You gotta try and find a balance. I'm just pointing out the hardship where, you know, there are women that are more inspired, less inspired, but like, as Rabbi said, you have little kids and you're trying to hold down the fort and a person's working and doing different things, whatever, it's draining. It's extremely draining. You know, people say like, you know, they're just tired all the time. I'm not saying they have chronic fatigue and other things. What happens when they get sick? The body, wears out, a little bit. You have that also. Even the best of situations. So, to obligate them the same as men would be unfair. Would be totally unfair. Where is the law requiring 10 males for God to be present? God's present everywhere, right? Let's make that clear. God's presence is everywhere. The question is, what's considered a community? That's the question. What is considered a community? Right? So the rabbis learned it out. Rabbis learned it out from what we call Gezer Shava. What's the Gezer Shava? Gezer Shava means you take a word that you take the same word and you say it in, let's say, two different verses, right? So you say in this verse it means this, and therefore in this verse it means the same thing. In other words, they're going to make a connection between two different verses, but there's the same word in the verse. So they're going to say if the word means this over there, then it must mean the same thing over here. right? So if I remember correctly, I'll get the source, but if I remember correctly, that's where they, that's where they learned it out. Since over here the word Adam means 10, it's at least 10. So we learn out that you need 10 for a minute. You need 10. You need 10 men. Desecration of God's name is only in front of 10. It's only in front of 10 Jews, sorry, 10 Jews. Doesn't apply to non-Jews. People throw around this word desecration of God's name. Okay, it might not be a good thing a person did, but I don't whatever. I don't really get into it. But a desecration of God's name is something very specific, something very very specific. So the obligation to pray, right? The Rambam and others agree that the obligation to pray is a Torah obligation, 100% a Torah obligation, right? And the only thing I would have to say during the day, at least once a day, is I can say, thank God. Thank God for this, or thank God for that, or thank God in general. According to the Torah, I fulfill my obligation. The times I need to pray, what I need to pray, how I need to pray, that's all rabbinical, right? It's all, you can say whatever you want, it's all rabbinical. Yeah? Doesn't mean doesn't mean we don't have to do it, right? We still have to do it, a lot of laws. That definitely a lot of laws. So that's, I get you the exact source, but that is where it's learned from. Someone says, sounds like you can drive to where you're praying, unless it's Shabbos, right? Right? Why wouldn't you be able to during the week? Unless it's a festival. Yeah, Shavuos is coming up Sunday night. Sunday night, so you got Sunday night to Monday, Monday night to Tuesday for everyone outside of Israel. So in general, traveling there would be forbidden, right? For a non-Jew could do it. Yeah, a Jew can't travel by car. That's forbidden, even on a festival, right? That would be forbidden during the week. Sure, everyone drives, right? I mean, if you have a car, again, depends how close it is. Yeah, depends how close it is. There are times, let's say, I need to get somewhere, and it's better for me to walk, just for exercise. So I know if I get 10, 15 minutes, I can make it, right? I can definitely make it by foot. If I don't, then either I'll go somewhere else or, I'll drive, be lazy. But you can certainly drive. During the week's no problem, right? You're right. It's only on Shabbos or festivals. To 10 adult Hasidic make Jews praying online together count as a minyan. Online's a problem. Online is a problem. I mean, some people did it during COVID or whatever because they had no choice. The problem is if it's something you need to fulfill your obligation, right? In other words, reading Torah, let's say, or answering Amen to blessings that you need to hear. Now you tell me, I heard the blessing, I can answer Amen. What's the problem? Now, in any other context, someone makes a blessing to give in a class, someone answers Amen. Very good, right? If someone's listening to the class 2 hours from now, they don't answer Amen to that blessing because they didn't hear it. They didn't hear it at the time the blessing was made. But that's not the point. The point is that when a person speaks through a microphone, through a computer, right, through anything that's fiber optics, you're not hearing directly the voice. If you don't hear my voice, doesn't matter. You're not hearing directly the voice. It's going through something else, right? It's not like being right there with the person. You gotta say, but I hear clear, right? If I hear clear, what's the problem? The problem is you're not hearing the exact voice. So therefore, if it's something you need to fulfill your obligation, let's say Havdalah, right? The last service on Saturday night. Someone makes the blessings, right? Even if you answer Amen, very good. Yeah, but you didn't hear it directly from the source. You heard it through something else. Let's say a telephone. That was the question. The question was asked back in the day. Someone may have heard Havdalah. They heard Havdalah after Shabbos on the phone. Someone made Havdalah on the phone. Do you fulfill your obligation? And the answer is no. Why? Because you're not hearing the voice. I mean, you're hearing the voice, but you're not hearing direct. That's why using a microphone is bad. Right. In Reform and conservative synagogues on Shabbos or a festival, that should be the worst transgression. That they use microphones. Right? That should be the worst transgression. Yeah, I say that tongue in cheek. Now the problem with the microphone is what we just said. If you have to fulfill your obligation hearing the Torah, Yeah, hearing certain blessings, having to say amen or whatever you answer. Yeah, you're hearing it through a microphone. But I hear the person clear. Forget about any background noise or any screeching noise, whatever. Doesn't matter if you hear it clear. Yeah, you're hearing it through a microphone. A microphone's not the same as the person himself. So therefore you can't fulfill your obligation. So there was a question came up during COVID. There was a question about hearing the Megillah, hearing the book of Esther. Now, the problem was the person was stuck somewhere and they couldn't get to synagogue. They couldn't get to synagogue. Somebody was going to do a reading of the book of Esther. They were going to do it through Zoom. They say, very good. Yeah, what's the problem? So first of all, you have to hear every word, right? So, second of all, well, that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you're not hearing it directly from the person. You're hearing it through a computer, through a microphone. Yeah. So the advice that was given was that they not only do they have to follow along, but they have to say word for word. That's the only way. They have to say it word for word, even if they themselves are doing it through a book. They're not doing it through a Megillah scroll. They're not doing it through a scroll. Yeah, they're doing it through a book. Yeah, okay. You still fulfill your obligation. Not the best thing to do if you don't have your own scroll, but okay. You still definitely fulfill your obligation, right? Nonetheless, that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you're hearing it through a microphone. And hear it through it. Now, this is something you have to fulfill your obligation. Right? That's the problem. It's something you have an obligation to fulfill that obligation here. Since you have to fulfill the obligation, you can't do it through a microphone. So what do you do? What do you do in this case? Because the person's going to make the blessing, right, over the book of Esther. It's going to make the Thanksgiving blessing another blessing very good. But you're hearing it through a microphone, so that's a problem. That's for sure a problem. But what do you do here in the book of Esther? How do you fulfill that obligation? So the answer given was, really, you shouldn't fulfill your obligation. The only way you can do it is to read along, right? You can't be anywhere they get stuck. So they couldn't be anywhere in the presence of anybody. So what they had to do was they had to follow along. That's what they had to do. That's what they had to do. So you can have 10 people in different places. Again, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem because you do see each other, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as if you're on a balcony, you see each other. But again, even with that, if any prayer that you have to answer, or you have to fulfill an obligation, the Zoom doesn't work. For anything. Hearing the Torah, the portion of the week doesn't help. Hearing the shofar doesn't help. Hearing Kiddush doesn't help. Hearing Havdalah doesn't help. All these things that don't help. Person may ask, well, isn't it better than nothing? You'll tell me it's better than nothing, you still don't fulfill your obligation. I mean, there were Reform and conservative congregations on Shabbos and festivals doing this. I mean, they're still doing it. People can't make it. They have a Zoom thing on Shabbos. They can't do. Yeah. Things you got to fulfill your obligation on, doesn't matter. The question would come up. What if I had my computer on, I had my phone on, it was only on Zoom. I didn't change anything, I didn't do anything. So maybe technically that wouldn't be a problem, right? You didn't touch any controls, you didn't have to move anything, good. Yeah. The problem still is you're not going to fulfill any obligation for anything, right? Because you're hearing it through a microphone, you're not hearing it through the person direct. Someone asks, is it same for non-Jews? Path to Olam Haba. Yeah, from the beatings of the grave, the levels to get to Gehenna. Good question. I would say, first of all, I think it's an easier path to get to the next world for non-Jews, even though there are a number of things a non-Jew can do that would they be liable for death penalty, but not everything a non-Jew transgresses for the Noahide laws is death penalty. But even so, even without that, I would say that as long as they repent, they should be okay. Now, there's going to be, obviously it's not going to be the same Olam Haba for a Jew. Who's got many more mitzvahs, right? So the whole thing, the whole path is going to be different, right? I don't think they have. I have to check this. I don't think they have the same thing as what they call chibut kever, like the grave gets beaten and different. I don't think everyone's going to be on the same level. I think that's for sure. Um, it could be there are different levels there, even for non-Jews, but it's not going to be the same. Not going to be the same place that Jews are for a lot. For a lot of different reasons. These other things probably don't apply. Yeah, the beating of the grave and all that probably doesn't apply, but it's an easier path, much easier path, right? Even a person, God forbid, like everybody who comes out of idolatry liable for death penalty, for sure liable for death penalty unless you repent. If a person repented, okay, so you take all these transgressions away. Yeah, so it's a lot easier. 100% it's a lot easier. Even things I would say, the Kaufman would say are a moral imperative that really don't apply according to Noahide laws, but they are a moral imperative, then are liable in them. Non-Jews speak Lashon Hara, curse as much as they want. Are they going to be liable for that? Certainly not death penalty, not even close, right? But are they going to be liable? They're not going to be liable. It's a good thing not to do it, but they're not going to be liable for it, right? They have a much easier path. Jews have a lot more things to do. Not only a lot more mitzvahs, they have a lot more. They have to control their thoughts, try and control their minds, try and change the way we need to change. Jews don't have that obligation. A lot easier, in that sense. But a lot of people say, I don't want to go that path. I want the whole thing. And, I want exactly what Jews go through. Okay. But again, it's a much harder process. Much harder process what we're obligated to do. No question. I'll look into that, but I think that's the case. I think a lot of the things that apply to Jews after they die, that are not going to apply to non-Jews. I definitely don't think they're going to apply to non-Jews. I'll look into it, but I think that's the case. Someone asked, to 10,000 Hasidic male Jews, okay, I answered that. Chabad can answer, it's more important where your mind is, where your body is. Right? What's in your mind is mind, location of the body means nothing. That's not true. That's definitely not true, because if your body if your body's next to a dumpster, yeah, and that dumpster stinks, your mind cannot be thinking Torah. So where your body is does matter, right? When it comes to prayer in general, it doesn't, right? That's true.
How do you pray when you use the bathroom?
You do it outside the bathroom. You don't pray in the bathroom. You can't think Torah in the bathroom. So you wash your hands afterwards and you say the blessing after, but you say it outside the bathroom because you can't pray in a disgusting place. So So can that's the problem. I always tell people that one of the things you're in the bathroom, yeah, that it's a big problem with thinking Torah. That's a huge problem, right? Because you're in a disgusting place. Even tell me it's natural, getting rid of bodily waste. Okay, that's true. That's 100% true. Does not negate the fact it's a disgusting place, right? It's a totally disgusting place. In other places like that also, if a person, let's say, went to a sauna, schwitz, we would call it. Yeah, you go to a sauna. Obviously men and women separate. Can you speak Torah in there? No. Everyone's naked. You can't speak Torah in there. Hey, tell me, private parts are covered up, this and that. Yeah, it's the problem. That's for sure a problem. Thinking Torah in the shower, no different. No different. Because you're naked. It doesn't matter if it's natural, right? That doesn't matter. The fact is that even if your eyes were closed, we'll make it very easy. Even if your eyes were closed, you don't see private parts. Very good. Still can't think in Torah because they're there, right? They're just there. Um, Someone asked 1 second. I see other questions here. Women create after men, creation is simple, more complex. They have different obligations, right? Women definitely have different obligations. Do you ever read non-religious books, like a novel? Not usually. Not usually. I don't even have time. so many books that I need to go through, but I mean Torah books, not Torah books written in English. Got a whole slew of them to go through. Never, and I just don't have time. But do I read secular novels? No, no. I mean, I'm sure some people do. I mean, there are a lot of good, Torah novels, that are made for the, obviously for the Torah community. But a lot of these things, secular novels in general are bad. They're bad because either of language or subject or both. Right? Someone wanted to read back in the day. Let's say, there weren't so many, English novels out there. Um, for the Orthodox community. So some people got Agatha Christie. Now Agatha Christie is pretty clean. Yeah. Yeah, it's relatively clean. So nothing wrong, nothing wrong with reading, Agatha Christie, for sure. Yeah, a guy has a different issue. Guy has a different issue. He should be learning. So if he's not, if he's too tired or whatever, okay, you try and learn something, that's less taxing, let's say on the brain. But why would they read secular things? So it depends what it is. Also, secular novel. No. You know, what if someone, I don't know, had a medical book? They want to go through a medical book in the bathroom. Yeah, that a problem? Wouldn't be a problem. They want, let's say they're not in the bathroom. They want to read certain things. It's going to help them in other ways. Okay. It's not, as long as you have fixed time for learning, you can do that. But back in the day, there was a big controversy reading Harry Potter. You say, what's the problem with Harry Potter? They say it's fiction. Very good. Right? It's fiction. Okay. So is all fiction the same? I don't know if all fiction is the same. Say things, have to do with wizardry, witchcraft, even if it's fiction. People said it's just, you just don't want those things in your mind. But again, other people, I do know some people that read secular things. Okay. They don't like the Jewish novels, this and that, so they read secular things. I don't, you want to ask me personally, I don't think it's a good thing, even if it's a woman. So I don't think it's a good thing. Yeah, plenty of good, Jewish things to read. They don't feel it's up to their capability, and they're more intellectual, and they're this. Okay, whatever. But yeah, women don't have the same obligations as men. So, like, yeah, if they want to, fine. But like, it's problematic. I would say, depending, obviously depending what it is. Um, Someone asks, really, toilets often in a separate tiny room. The shower and sink is in another room. Yeah, but you have, most people have at least more than one bathroom, right? So one bathroom you have, it's only a toilet. Very good. Yeah, another bathroom you have a shower and a toilet. Yeah. So say you're taking a shower, you know, there's nothing disgusting in the toilet. So what? Still a toilet there, right? Still can't think Torah there, right? It's still a toilet there. But you're right. In a place that you only have a toilet, very good. Yeah, then certainly can't think Torah. But in a place where that's a good question. You have a shower. You have a shower and a toilet there. Can I think Torah in such a place? Still a toilet there. Most people would say you can't. Well, the Rabbinic authorities say even in such a place you can't think Torah. The Jewish people go to the movies. No. let me rephrase that. Modern Orthodox Jews watch movies. I'm not gonna say all of them, but a lot of them do. They don't see any problem with it. Now, you get a problem with immorality, you get a problem with violence, just bad, just bad, what do you call it? What's the word? Bad messages. Yeah, it's got a lot worse. A lot worse. Yeah, they're just bad messages. Anti-Torah. Most movies today, total anti-Torah. Yeah, cartoons. I can go through cartoons so we show how violent they are and anti-Torah they are. Because come on, it's a cartoon. What's so bad about a cartoon? Bad values. They're funny. I'm not gonna say not. They are funny. Still. Still. I grew up in Tom and Jerry and others. They're funny. I'm not gonna say not. They're funny, but the values are bad. And they haven't gotten worse. I don't think they've gotten better. Movies have a whole slew of problems. You know, even if they're G, you don't have a problem, let's say, you don't have a problem with language. Okay, that's a good thing. We have all kinds of other problems. We have all kinds of other problems. Immorality issues. No question. Yeah, you might G things. The values are bad. Yeah. Again, in a modern Orthodox community, many watch movies. I'm not saying there aren't ultra Orthodox Jews that do, they shouldn't. Right? For sure they shouldn't. Everyone's got an evil inclination, okay. But in general, they're just the values are bad. Right? The values are bad. Even a movie theater. Even a movie theater. Yeah. Forget about, someone will say, what about the people that are there? That's a different issue. You know, and you're dealing with, you know, other people you might not want to deal with in general or be around in general. Today it's much easier. You don't have to go to the movies, right? Get Netflix, get something else. You watch on your computer, you watch at home, on your phone. So you don't even have to go to the movies if you're going to do that. But I'm saying, the values are bad. Right? Sports, same thing. I think the values are bad. For an Orthodox Jew, for a guy, the worst thing you can say, it's just a waste of time. Even if you're not going to learn, it's still a waste of time. Okay, you don't get around that. But technically, that's pretty much you could say it's going in the ways of non-Jews. Yeah, you could say that for sure. But entertainment in general, it's the values are bad. All of it. I mean, it'd be very easy. Take a 2-hour movie, an hour and a half movie. I mean, so easy to pick it apart. Even G movies be very easy to pick apart. How these things are antithetical to Torah. So why would people watch it? Again, let's say there's no immorality, there's no cursing and no other thing. Let's say, yeah, the values of it. What they're giving over, they want you to think about is bad in many, many cases. You say maybe 10 minutes is maybe say half an hour is no problem. Okay. But why are people watching it? Because they have nothing to do and they're entertained. It's entertaining. And they're going to say movies aren't entertaining. They're entertaining. Unless you don't like TV. Unless you don't like it. Most people enjoy being entertained. Yeah. Um, um, we're supposed to repent in a quorum or in our own time. Personal prayer. Personal prayer. But every day you say the Shemona Esrei, there's a place there to repent for repentance. Right? So for a woman, you can do it by yourself. You don't have to do it with men. You don't have to do it with a minion. The only time it's certainly better is certainly on Yom Kippur. Yeah. But if a woman's sick or she can't go to synagogue, she can do it on her own also. But a person can pray every day and repent every day. They don't need a minion for that. What's the best way to repent? We don't have that much time. What's the best way to repent? I would say to read books of Mussar. Read Path of the Just. Read the Gates of Repentance. So that's a good one. Make you feel like an absolute piece of dirt. Read the Ways of the Righteous. Right? It goes like systematically through like a lot of bad character traits and how to try and overcome them. And pick something that you have trouble doing. Yeah, one thing. I wouldn't say multiple things, it'll be too hard. One thing and try and figure out how can I do this better? How can I make it better? How can I try and overcome it? Learning Mussar inspires people. It can make you feel like a piece of dirt also, but it can be inspiring. Why is it inspiring? Because you see, you have a long way to go. And it can fire up a person and say, okay, I want to change. I want to be better. But like if you read the book Path of the Just, there's a certain point where you just say, I can't read on. Why not? Because, it just gets to the point where you say, I'm not holding there. Right? Right? And again, it doesn't really matter, but you got to try. You can't just give up. Right? But at a certain point you feel like, it's not talking to me anymore because just not holding there. Right? But it's good, you know, to read these things to see what I should be doing, what the ideal should be. Yeah, and then break it down by different character traits, where you see you have problems and what you want to do to try and fix it. What's the best way for a woman to avoid stumbling a man in public when she can't avoid it being around the person? You mean stumbling block, I assume. Um, I'll tell you the truth, this is a big problem, not just for women. It's a big problem for men also. And the reason is, even if someone's married in the best of marriages, yeah, doesn't mean on the physical side they're dead. Doesn't mean that. Right? But at the same time, you have to have boundaries. You have to make boundaries. I know someone that will never call a man under any circumstance by the first name. They'll always call him Mr. So and so or Rabbi so and so. They will never call them by the first name. Why? It's a boundary. You got to make boundaries. That's the only way. That is the only way. But there are a lot of stumbling blocks. Lot of stumbling blocks. So if you don't make boundaries, if you don't make any boundaries, then it's going to be very hard. Very, very hard. What's the best way to remember to not give bad people the benefit of the doubt? That's a good question. Well, let's say like this. Someone, who a lot of the time does the right thing, find them in a compromising position. There's an obligation to judge them favorably, even if it's hard. Obligation, not just a good thing, it's an obligation. Somebody who's evil, doesn't care about Torah, mitzvahs, or anything, then there's an obligation to judge them. If you find them in a compromising position, there's an obligation to judge them not in a favorable way, right? Why would a person think if they're evil, I have to judge them favorably? You can say, okay, I feel sorry for them. That could be, it's not their fault. Maybe this, okay. Doesn't change their status, right? The problem is, we look at these people, it's not a personal attack, it's not a personal vendetta, right? Unless it is, it'll be a problem. But in general, it's not a personal vendetta over here, right? There are things you can't do. Yeah. If a 90-year-old woman, or, a dried up prune, a man either, doesn't matter. Yeah. But we'll speak about a woman. Let's say there's no one in my house. She walks into the house, shuts the door. I got to open the door. Either I got to open the door or call people and say, whatever. Someone has to be able to come in at some point. Yeah, otherwise you have a problem being alone, whether you're someone of the opposite sex. Yeah, not including the spouse or a child or a grandchild or a parent. Right, it doesn't apply in these cases. Right, but you're gonna say, come on, what could happen? 90 years old, dried up prune. What's the problem? Still forbidden. Still forbidden. Yeah. So in this case, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what somebody does. You got to be able to look at them. You got to be able to look at them for who they are, right? And the problem is we get all, mushy gushy, and we have all these feelings come up. And it's not really their fault, and it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter any of these things. It matters on their status, right? It matters on their status. Take a secular Jew, right? We'll make fun of secular Jews here. You take a secular Jew. Yeah, they know nothing from nothing. They get caught in a compromising position, whatever it is. Now you're going to tell me it's not their fault they don't know anything. It's not their fault they don't keep Shabbos. It's not their fault they don't keep kosher. You're right. It's not their fault. Yeah? And if they get caught in a compromising situation, that goes out the window. That doesn't matter. The fact is, I don't have to judge them favorably. It's a mitzvah not to judge them favorably. For that reason, there's no believability. What do I care how they grew up? Person comes on in front of a rabbinical court, let's say. Yeah, someone got caught stealing. Say you don't understand. You don't really need the money. The people weren't losing any money. This, that. What is the court going to say? Because they're men, not women. What is the court going to say? No offense to any women out there. What's the court going to say? Guilty. He's got to pay it back, whatever the obligation is. whatever they took. Maybe they'll take other things into account, but in general, they are going to say guilty as charged. And you got to pay back however you have to pay it back. That's why women can't be judges, one reason, right? They're too emotional. Yeah, just, men and women are very emotional, very good. I'm not even talking about when they get their period, it has nothing to do with it. They're very emotional, okay. So they'll say, you don't understand, you gotta see what they've been through, look at how they grew up. What's the guy gonna say? Kill him, try him. He's gotta pay back. I don't care what he's going through, he's gotta pay back. That's it. Yeah. So you gotta look at the whole picture. Yeah. You can't just look at the person themselves. You got to see beyond that. And it's terrible. People go through terrible things. It doesn't change. The problem is it doesn't change the status. It absolutely doesn't change their status. We can feel bad for them. We can have compassion for them. We do, we can feel all kinds of things. That doesn't change anything. That does not change anything. Right? We have to get that through our heads. That personal attack. Right? There are technical issues. Certain things I had to do, which I wasn't happy about, but the Torah says is what you have to do, and that's it. It's not, try to explain to somebody who's holding nowhere in the world, this is not a personal vendetta. This is not, listen, if I could give you the honor, I would give it to you. I don't have any problem. Problem is, the Torah says I can't. So what am I supposed to do? Well, I come first. No, Torah comes first. Torah comes first. But yeah, you have to tell them it's nothing personal. I'm not doing it to get you angry, whatever. There's a reality, right? There is the reality. And the reality can be ugly. Yeah. But doesn't change anything, right? It absolutely doesn't change anything. And you'll get cursed probably. People say it's sexist, it's biased, it's this, it's that. Can say whatever they want. It doesn't change anything, right? It doesn't change anything. So what do you expect? Yeah, I'd love to give you this honor, but technically, there's a problem here. Well, can't you bend the rules? No. There's no bending there. There's no, if it's something where you can't get around. I've been in a lot of situations like that. So the only question is how much I'm going to get hit over the head with a sledgehammer. That's the only question. Damage control. I'm very good at that. How much damage you going to give? Right? How much damage is going to happen? Okay, you've been dealt with a bad hand. Right? You're playing poker, you get all single digits. All single cards, no, nothing in a row, no matches, nothing. No pairs, whatever, no nothing. What do? You fold. I mean, unless you're good at bluffing, but you fold. That's what you got to do. So you dealt with a bad hand. What do? And there's no way around it. There's no way around it. Torah's not a pretzel. It's not silly putty. Right? The law is what it is. And certain things, it doesn't change. It's sad. It's terrible. It's okay. That doesn't matter. You can yell and scream till you're Timbuktu. So what? I'm not going to wilt. I feel bad. I can say I understand. I feel your pain. Doesn't change anything. Does not change anything. Listen, if you can go out of your way, there is a way to do something. You're going to make everybody happy. Great. That's what you should do. 100%. You do it to the best of your ability, make everybody happy. Family harmony is worth a lot. But guess what? There are times you can't do that. There are times it's absolutely impossible. Yeah, I can tell you, personal experience. I've been through a number of these. They always follow me around. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. Oh, can't you compromise? Can't you do this? No. You just can't. What do you want? Then you can't do it. So they're going to yell and curse. Is that what the Torah wants? No, but you got to stand up for Torah. You got to do what Torah says. That's it. You don't come out smelling like a rose a lot of times. That's it. Right? It's sad, but not much to do. Someone asked, does the Torah go where you go in your mind? Sure. 100% wherever you are. People can be waiting for a bus, thinking in Torah. You're driving down the way, thinking in Torah. Goes wherever you are. 100%. Doesn't just stay inside. Right? That's for sure. Um, Is it okay to see them as a snake? Yeah. If you feed the snake, it'll bite you. You know, I'll tell you the truth. We think a lot of times we're going to change other people. It may be true, may not be true. We may have the ability, we may not. But don't think for 1 second what they say doesn't affect you. Any little thing that they can say is that's heresy can have an effect. Can have an effect. So yeah, something like that, something like that, you stay away from the plate. Now, sometimes you can't do that. And this happens all the time. There's people talking about it in corporate America, people in like high positions, in corporate America. There are all kinds of problems they were talking about. I mean, these were all men. Women's issues came up. What people talk about comes up. Lashon hara, people cursing, saying things that are not appropriate, right? Let's say. But, they all said they held their ground. People respected them for it. They didn't speak about it when they were around them. Okay. There are a ton of challenges. A ton of challenges. The workforce is full of them. Full of them. Yeah, it's very hard. Right? I don't think there's any question. I think, a person works for, a secular company, let's say, nothing wrong with it. And all the people around you are secular, men, women, who knows what else. There are fundamental issues. I'm not going to say no. There are challenges. 100%. There are challenges. A person work with an all religious crew. An all religious crew. Also challenges. Different challenges, but they're definitely challenges also. There are people, let's say women work with all women. I'm not saying it always happens. Yeah, that's obviously better. Men with all men. I have a friend of mine got a job in cybersecurity. And he said it was God's irony. He was like one of the only men there, and he had to work with like 10 other women. That's not good. That was not a good environment. I didn't like the job anyway, or the work either. But eventually left and did something else. But like, that's a problem. Not a problem with the women. I'm not saying it's a problem with them. It's a problem. You got one guy, 10 women, or 6 women, or whatever. I mean, and you have to interact with them. I'm not saying anything's going to happen, but you gotta have boundaries. Sure, you have to have boundaries. Not, very hard. So, people are in different situations, but the workplace is full of problems. Yeah, in the best of situations, you run into problems. So, I'm not saying, don't go work in the workplace, better work online. I mean, it is, in different ways, but still, there are going to be issues. There'll be moral issues. Yeah, what do you do that, you know, like, people steal or they do other things? You hear about it, you see it, whatever. It has an effect. Everything you see, right? I can't emphasize this enough. Everything you see and hear, it has an effect. Has an effect. Yeah. Any other? Um, what if it's a movie about Jews like Fiddler on the Roof? Fiddler on the Roof, I'll tell you, one of the worst movies. One of the absolute worst movies that a Jew can watch. Right? Um, absolutely one of the worst movies. Because if you look at the movie itself, what it stands for, what it stands for. Yeah, it's about intermarriage. It's about leaving Jew, the shtetl, where all Jews live, and Jews living together, and secularizing everything. It's a horrific movie. A horrific movie, right? There are movies with Jewish themes. Okay. But again, so what's the worst thing? Right? If you're not going to have any other issues, what's the worst thing? The worst thing's going to be it's just a waste of time. You could have been learning. Yeah? So if you were going to learn anyway, you wanted to watch it, okay, it's better. Watching those type of things are better again, as long as it's a good message. If it's not a good message, like Fiddler on the Roof, no. And a lot of secular things that are bad. It depends what it is. If it's got, if it's going to, portray Judaism in a good way, and things like that, okay. If not, some of these things that are out there are horrific. They're absolutely horrific. Yeah. Just points Jews in a in a bad way. Someone made a lot of money from it. Someone was in the Orthodox community, went off for whatever reason, then aired out their dirty laundry and made millions from it. Like that, I would tell you, yeah, for sure you can't watch that. Yeah. And even if they have, even let's say they have a real gripe. Let's say, let's say they have a real gripe. Okay. Even if I would agree, why in the world are you putting it out in that form? And why cause other people to hate Judaism or hate Orthodox Jews? Yeah, it's horrific. I say keep it to yourself, whatever. But people have this thing they want to show other people, how bad Orthodox Jews are and how we treat women and all these things. Yeah, that I would say you stay away from. Someone made a mint from it. A mint. I always say I'm in the wrong profession. Wrong profession. Yeah, but you don't want money like that. Like, wants to air out their dirty water and make everyone look bad. Again, even if it would be true, I would agree. Even if it's true that they have a legitimate gripe. Let's say you're going to put it out in that form. That's how you're going to do it and trash the entire Orthodox community. Yeah, that I wouldn't watch. That for sure I wouldn't watch. That's horrific. That is horrific. So if it's got a good value and other things, good. Not a problem. All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Israel Time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, ethics for fathers, local Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman at gmail.com, RBBI, CHIMCOFFMAN at gmail.com. Hopefully by Thursday I'll find my voice back.